There's three types of gases in the body: oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nitric oxide. Cardio Miracle is your advanced formula nitric oxide booster and provides you essential support for increased vitamin D3 and blood flow and oxygen, cellular health and reproduction, improved cardiovascular health, enhanced energy and clarity, and it supercharges your sexual stamina. So start reclaiming your health today and increase your energy, stamina, and focus. Go to cardiomiracle.com, enter discount code GRIT. That's cardiomiracle.com, discount code GRIT. Take advantage of this awesome product and start feeling better today. cardiomiracle.com, discount code GRIT.
Views and opinions expressed by hosts and guests on Patriots with Grit do not necessarily reflect those of Patriots with Grit LLC, its founders, and owners.
Get ready for truth bombs and guidance from conservative leaders and entrepreneurs from God-fearing, freedom-loving, truth-telling, patriotic Americans. Welcome to Patriots with Grit. Now let's jump into today's episode with your host, Darren Ross.
Welcome to the show, Marley Hornik. You are in the midst of trying to solve a major problem in this country, and it's our election system. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're headed with this project.
Well, thank you, Randy. Thanks for having me on. I'm the CEO of United Sovereign Americans, and I originally came to this from the organization that I founded in New York Citizens Audit, which did an extraordinary job in a very difficult environment, auditing the state's official records regarding the 2020 and 2022 elections there, and actually a group of amazing patriots, over 2,000 volunteers who worked on that investigation as qualified experts volunteering, and also who went to town boards all over New York State for 2 years. Basically, we went to over 600 town board meetings and presented our facts and findings. We had tried to go to county legislative meetings thinking that they might be interested in these egregious problems with the voting system, and we were just completely stonewalled even at the county level. So we went ahead and literally over 600 times we went to town boards. We went again and again and again, and we just were pressuring them basically because the heart of our investigation in New York, and now what we do at United Sovereign Americans in 21 states, is we take the official state records regarding elections. We audit them from the perspective of the law. So if we just play prosecutor. Hey, if we were prosecutors, what would we look at in this database that would catch our attention? What are the red flags here? The issues inside of the records that appear to be blatant violations of state and federal law. And, the votes counted, all these things. So that's kind of a summary of what, how I came to this. I'm a homeschool mom, but now I'm officially, the CEO of these two organizations. And here I'm talking to you from DC. I'm on Capitol Hill for a couple of days talking to lawmakers because our elections, just to summarize, and then we can kind of get into it, where your curiosity is, but our elections are just a dumpster fire in terms of the way that they're being administered and the fealty to the principle embedded in the third sentence of the United States Constitution, that it is the people of the several states who will choose their representatives. And honestly, it's not that we don't know if the people are choosing them, it's that no one knows who's choosing them. And there's no way to prove it. So that's kind of an intro to what we're discovering.
And, people are probably resting on their laurels at this time because, Trump won. We overcame the election fraud, which we probably know that there was still a lot of integrity issues in there. It was just the too big to rig happened, and we can't count on that again. And we've got to do something. Do you agree we got to do something and have it fixed by midterms?
We have to secure the 2026 midterms. And, I was at a meeting last night with Gary Strong from Alabama, and he had it dead on. I really applaud that man. He has a lot of courage, and many people in the room saw it the same way he did it. And there he is in Alabama. He doesn't have to concern himself with states like California. But he said, how come we won the presidential election and then turned and walked away and allowed tremendous numbers of down ballot races to be potentially manipulated in 30 days of counting when you have an electronic system with real-time updates? Like, why does it take that long? And of course, the only reason it takes that long is because there's something that needs to be scrutinized. It shouldn't take that long. So just without, casting any stone at one race or another, I think there is a lot of agreement, not only among citizens, but even here I am in DC, even the lawmakers themselves are saying something is terribly wrong, and we have to look at this because right, too big to rig. That's not what we found. Let me go into a little bit some of
Okay.
our investigations and the findings of those investigations, and the actions that we've taken so far as United Sovereign Americans. And just to clarify again, the entire organization is volunteer. Every single person there, we have thousands of people across the country now, not just in New York, across the country, going to town boards, going to county registers, going to law enforcement, going everywhere we can to say, look at these facts and findings.
Mhm.
This is a huge organization, and all of our auditors are credentialed professionals. So when we look at the elections, we look at it from a very simple perspective. There are so many election integrity organizations out there. They're looking at one particular issue or one particular element. We applaud that. But we look at it differently. What is an election? Well, the only things in an election are voters, votes, counts, and proof. Because if you're talking about people who are getting authorized, there's only 435 representatives in the House, and there's only 100 people in the Senate. That's 535 Americans who are authorized to basically decide how deep into your bank account they're allowed to stretch their hand and what they're going to spend that on. So when I say proof, I mean proof.
Mm-hmm.
They better be able to prove to the American people that those are the individuals we authorize to serve in those positions. Now, voters, votes, counts, and proof. So we look at the official statewide voter registration lists. These are supposedly all of the qualified eligible citizen voters in any particular state. These are the people who have been vetted and verified as, qualified to cast ballots in federal elections in the United States of America. And there's a control point in the election process before they get added to the registration database. They're supposed to be verified before they can possibly get into that database. So when you talk about, hey, we're going to have a clean the voter rolls initiative. Well, the assumption, if you're going to clean the voter rolls, is that the only things in the voter roll in the first place, the only people in there are those who were previously vetted and qualified. So United Sovereign Americans in 21 states, we found 29 million registrants, duly qualified registered voters in the United States of America, whose registration records are materially deficient according to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. This means that they are not qualified to actually vote, and they're only allowed really under the law to vote provisionally. This is 29 million times the control point of registering only qualified citizen voters was either broken or evaded. Now, these are people that when I say they're materially deficient, what does that mean? Because I've spent so much time now hanging out with our attorneys that I start to sound like one. I am not an attorney. This is like my food now.
Yep.
Materially deficient means that some aspect or element of their voter registration record does not comport with the law, and you cannot be certain that they are a qualified voter. Why is this a big deal? Because under criminal law at the federal level, registering fictitious voters is a felony when you do it once. So we're looking at 29 million records where, for example, the person, according to the official record, is registered to vote before they're born. Or people whose birth date, if you look at a copy of the rolls from, say, 2022, and then you look at one in 2023, their birth date is different. Now, there are a lot of things in this country right now that are considered mutable that didn't used to be, but birth date is not yet on that list. So how did their birth date change? How did that happen? How did their registration date move backwards in time when the voter rolls moved forwards in time? These are really serious questions. The law says you can only have one statewide voter ID number for each voter. How come, for example, in New York, there are 1.5 million people that have more than one unique statewide identifier? Are those clerical errors? The law says there shouldn't be one in there, and there's 1.5 million. So you see, this is a serious matter.
Are they intentionally put in that way? I mean, that might be a dumb question, but are they intentionally doing that? I mean, it almost has to be.
It's not a dumb question. It's not a dumb question.
It's not an accident.
You're already thinking like a prosecutor. That is a very, very good question. The question is, how come no one wants to find out? Because what we did as United Sovereign Americans was we queried, or we audited 21 states' official voter registration databases at the statewide level. We took the results of every single one of those audits, and we sent a comprehensive report back to the chief election official of the state. We sent it to the chief election official, we sent it to the attorney general, we sent it to the state police, we sent it to, at the federal level, we sent it to the FBI, we sent it to public integrity at the DOJ, and we sent it to the Department of Homeland Security. And we said, here are the exact registration records we took out of your database, and we would like an answer line by line. If you do have some record of this individual and the record just needs to be corrected in the list, please let us know, because otherwise this looks like the most gigantic pile of felonies you can ever wrap your brain around. In fact, it's so big that people don't know what to do. They don't.
So, I mean, it was probably crickets. I mean, because we've seen no response. We've seen no response. We've seen excuses. We've seen just blocking people for no reason. It's like an intentional show of guilt that they don't want to fix this.
Yeah, it's very bewildering, actually, and you're correct. And we even took it a step further. As United Sovereign Americans, we hired an attorney, and our primary attorney for this set of lawsuits is Bruce Castor Jr., the former Attorney General of the state of Pennsylvania, and also the counsel who represented President Trump in the second impeachment trial in front of the U.S. Senate. So, not just some guy who's thrown something at the wall to see if it sticks. Let's just say we filed 9 federal lawsuits against the chief election official and the attorney general of the states, and against the United States Attorney General. Now, what did we do? We just asked for them to follow the law. We asked the courts to force these officials to follow the law. We asked them to force them to correct these records, figure out what happened, and if they can't figure out what happened, investigate this problem, because it's enormous. 10 million of those registration records are recorded as having voted in the 2022 midterm. And there were, and additionally, there were 2 million more votes counted than voters who voted. So there's 2 million votes that don't even have, a January 1st registrant associated with them. No one knows where the ballot came from. And this is, you could go to Jupiter and back. This is the official record. There is no other record of what took place in a state's midterm election in 2022. This is the verified fact. So those lawsuits, every single state, unfortunately, decided to, file a motion to dismiss the cases. It's very sad, actually, because even in the mandamus lawsuits themselves, we wrote the meaning of the right to vote is being destroyed.
Right.
And even these individuals who are working at the highest levels of government in their states chose to attempt to pass this hot potato. Let's just pretend this was never filed. Let's pretend this never happened. let's pretend we're living under government by consent, and we've already proven it, and they're not allowed to question us. This is just, it's so wrong.
When you said that they motioned to dismiss, so I'm assuming they did dismiss it.
No, actually, it's not settled yet. We're still at the district level in 8 states. And what we're anticipating, one of the reasons that we filed so many of these lawsuits, because we could have just filed one and it could have been settled as a matter of law, but we filed in 7 different federal circuits. This is what citizens do when they're really just sick of it. I mean, we sat and we just puzzled through every way that we could make sure this gets heard. We filed in 7 different federal circuits, and we anticipate losing in many of them. But we also anticipate that some of them will be favorable, or likely will be favorable to the matter. So what happens when, say, the Fifth Circuit in Texas decides that this is a justiciable matter and it does look very concerning, and they agree with us, and say, Pennsylvania, over in the Fourth Circuit, they decide, no, this doesn't look like something we need to look at. So when they disagree, the Supreme Court is by law forced to hear the case. Actually, they have to adjudicate the question for the nation, because the circuit courts can't disagree in federal court.
Yeah, and I have concerns, and I'll just you just kind of set it up for me. So I've got friends that still don't realize or think that this election was, or the prior 2020 election was cheated. But say, oh, well, you guys filed all these lawsuits with the courts and you lost them all. And I'm like,
Right.
no. I said, there's a thing called standing, and they pulled that thing. So, and because you can't tell them the courts are corrupt, because they'll just say, yeah, that's just how you are. So,
Right.
you're trying to
It's those glasses you're wearing, Randy.
Yeah, I mean, you can't explain anything to them that's legit because they can't handle it. So, give us an idea of, when they said there was no standing, are you guys, is your pathway a little bit different than that, where you're gaining standing?
Well, that's a very good question. Actually, we've approached the matter very differently than any of the lawsuits that were filed after 2020. And just to be clear, whether it's cheating or what we have uncovered is a huge pile of what's called election misconduct.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not arguing about any election outcome. In fact, to the contrary, we say, actually, we have no idea. Just looking at the state's records, we have no idea who won any election in 2022, and neither does the state. That's the problem. And that is misconduct. The only reason an election bureaucracy or an election office exists, their only justification for their existence is to administer elections on behalf of the American people, to authorize their representatives for state and federal government. That's why the election office exists. So if they can't keep these records straight, that is misconduct. It's like malpractice, right? You wouldn't go to a colon surgeon for brain surgery. You wouldn't do it because they wouldn't know how to do it. It would be malpractice if they tried. It's the same principle. And in fact, it's settled under criminal law. The United States Supreme Court decided in 1888 that disobedience to the law for an election official is criminal intent. They're equated because the position is probably, the chief election official of each state, there's only 50 of them. They could be the most important people in the country. Their signature certifying that a federal election is accurate and legally compliant authorizes the federal government, and it authorizes the state government. It gives them, it says to you, you have the people's permission to now pass law that governs the country. It's staggering, really, in how important it is. And unfortunately, I think a lot of folks who are in that position, certainly not all of them, some of them really do a fabulous job. And I would like to highlight Chris Kobeck from the state of Kansas, who worked really hard in 2017 on President Trump's Election Integrity Commission to do exactly what United Sovereign Americans has now done, which is audit the nation's voter rolls and find out what's the magnitude of the problem. But a lot of the folks in those positions, I'm sorry to say, are not data scientists. They're not familiar with the technical aspects of the system. And they are, honestly, it's kind of surprising how many of them end up in Congress. So it looks like a stepping stone is what I'm trying to say. And I wish that it wasn't like that. I wish they would take that job very seriously. And perhaps I'm being unfair, but what we're looking at is such a dumpster fire. It's hard to think positively. It really is.
Yeah, and I think you have uncovered what's wrong with our politicians. You said it earlier. I think they had the wrong surgeon for their brain surgery. That's why they got crap for brains. So
it is frustrating.
You've got on your website, you've got all kinds of information here. And I probably shouldn't even try to read it. I don't have my glasses on, but 3 million votes were altered or couldn't be post certification. There's just
Yeah.
astronomical numbers of inconsistencies. And it's like, I know it's pretty much in every state. That's the crazy part.
For example, when the vote is edited after certification 3 million times, it's not an inconsistency. Those are adjudications to a certified federal election. If there is not a lawful process to edit the election, that is considered, like I said, it's considered an adjudication.
Mm-hmm.
And that the process for that is in the law. And if there are not party sign-offs and third party observers of that process, on what basis were those edits made? How are they editing a certified record? That's like you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to turn my taxes into the IRS. I'm going to give them my best guesstimate of what my taxes are from last year. And then in a little while, I'll fix it up and I'll send them the real one. I don't think that is a very good strategy for dealing with the IRS. Personally, I'm not recommending it. Don't try this at home. No. But it's like an equivalent of what they're doing.
Yeah. I just know there's so much, I can't even really bring it out at this point. There is so much that we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years. One state might have a big problem. I think in Arizona, there was like 60% of the votes were adjudicated. And it should be like less than 0.25% or something like that.
Right. Well, that's a process control. Okay. So one of the things that is confusing to many people about elections, so I don't know about you, but perhaps some of your listeners, is how do we fix the problem? And people think, well, if we just have voter ID, we'll fix the problem. Or if we just stop mail-in balloting, we'll fix the problem. And those are great ideas. Or, hey, let's dump the machines. Then we won't have the machines anymore and we'll fix the problem. The issue is elections are a process, and there are many stages in the process where there's what we would call a control point. I talked about the one at registration, right? How did 29 million registration records pass through a control point with false information in them, right? And how did 10 million of those individuals end up getting a ballot and having it cast and counted in a federal election with a deficient registration record? So those are some process control points that clearly were just railroaded right over. Our mandamus lawsuits talk about error inside of the voting system. What you talked about there, if you have a 60% adjudication rate, what that means is that your tabulation system is operating in a state of a total loss of control.
Or
because the amount
or intentional, so you can change
votes. Right. I'm not saying that it may or may not be intentional. What I'm saying is you can't operate the system with that accuracy or with that error rate. You're allowed a 0.0008% inaccuracy in the tabulation of ballots. So if there's a 60% error rate, you see, this is This is part of what we don't understand sometimes as citizens. When you see that roll across your screen and you just think, God, that is so wrong. There is something so wrong about that. You're right. It is actually, whatever, 50,000 times the error rate allowed
Right.
under federal law at the tabulator level. So, but if no one says that and no one files that lawsuit, they say, well, it's not fair because the other candidate won, and the problem is that the wrong candidate was certified. No, the problem is that they have no idea who won because they're operating a system in a total loss of control status, which is illegal. You can't do that. When you don't know who's holding the steering wheel of that election, it's like, stop the bus. You have to halt everything and find out who is controlling the process. Because if it's not in the control of the officials, who is in charge? And this is where this is the break everywhere. Everywhere we see, like you saw in the 2022 election for Kerry Lake, there were 200 and some thousand ballots without chain of custody. And the judge says, well, you can't find someone, I don't see anyone who did this on purpose. And again, they're arguing over whether or not Kerry Lake won or Katie Hobbs won. You know what? That's 200,000 counts of election misconduct.
Yeah.
But it's not how the attorneys argued it. It's not Kerry Lake who's getting robbed or Katie Hobbs who's getting robbed. It's the citizens of the state of Arizona who have a fundamental right, a constitutional right, or you could call it a civil right to a fairly and accurately administered election. They're the ones who are being cheated. And that's why it's criminal law.
So is would we have standing by filing under civil rights violation?
That's exactly what we did.
Okay.
We filed, so the mandamus lawsuits, the 9 lawsuits we filed in 2024 are technically, they're not civil rights actions, but they have nothing to do with outcome, their process, and they're in civil court. So fundamentally, they're a civil rights lawsuit. Now, the lawsuits we plan to file next, if we cannot get investigations, and we're very hopeful, that's what we're doing here in DC and continuing to work towards that all over the country, is to force these systems to be investigated. And hopefully the new administration will be more interested in this problem than the last administration was. And certainly it's an inherited problem. All of the reports we sent to the previous administration were in 2023 and 2024. So there's no reason that the current DOJ, and I believe now we have Pam Bondi is going to be confirmed or has been confirmed as the new Attorney General of the United States of America. All she has to do is pick up the ball and run with it. It's not partisan. She's not initiating anything. She's just picking up an existing investigation.
Yeah, you're not claiming that, so and so won. You're just saying the system's broke.
Right, and she's not starting an investigation. We brought this evidence to the DOJ in starting in August of 2023. We started filing reports with the DOJ and the Department of Homeland Security because it looks like the system is breached. You can't have this level of misconduct kind of like in a uniform manner. Now that it's not uniformly distributed, but it is all over the country. And there's another problem because we said to ourselves, all right, well, we're going to go to court, right? We're going to bring all these registration records and they're going to say, well, this is just clerical error. You don't know if these are real voters or not. Nobody knows, and the state had to verify them and I'm sure they did their job, right? So we said, we better study this. So we, again, our auditing staff, the people who volunteer with United Sovereign Americans are credentialed professionals in cyber forensic recovery, in statistics, in every kind of background, because it's like, wow, if our representatives aren't going to fix this problem, we have to fix it. We have to bring all the greatest minds in the country into a side operation, and we're going to get this done. So we ran a prevalence study on the voters themselves. Now, we didn't ever touch personal identifying information. We ran this study using the publicly available information in the voter registration list. And we ran on a randomized statistical basis, we ran sets of voters from 7 different states. And we ran them across 3 different databases, commercially available databases that are used by law enforcement to find people in space and time, to locate people who are, skipping town. And we didn't just use one database, we ran these across 3 separate commercial lists. We were shocked by what we found. In California, they had, in the 2022 midterm, they counted 11.1 million votes. 993,000 of those voters do not appear to exist. They cannot be found in any of those 3 databases. So 993,000 voters who voted in California either don't have a bank account, they live off grid, and they catch their water from the roof, and they just dry their clothes in the sun. They have no presence. 2.2 million of them voted from addresses that they did not live at the time of the election. And we set a wide window around the election. We said, okay, if they're at that address for 6 months before the election or within 6 months of the election on either side, we're just not even going to bother. We're not going to report it because it's just too close. It's possible that it just takes that long for them to process information in a real-time update electronic system. But these are voters who voted from addresses that they're not associated with during that entire period. Some of them haven't lived at that address for years. Some of them never lived at that address.
So were any of them dead?
Yes.
So they had the dead voters on there too.
Yep. And which, it's not the big problem. It's a problem because that's a violation of the law, but it's not like that's what the problem is. The problem is these people don't appear to exist. And when you have over 3 million votes, 30% of the votes counted in a federal election wherein 52 members of the United States House of Representatives were authorized to legislate on behalf of the citizens of California and changing the laws for the entire country. Houston, we have a huge problem. It is, like I said, I'll say it again, it is a dumpster fire. It's shocking. Pennsylvania in 2022 had 477,000 people vote who do not appear to exist at all.
So were you able to look at those that voted that don't exist? Were you able to see how they voted? Was it a mail-in ballot? Did they walk in and run it through the machine, or can you pull that down?
That's an interesting question. We didn't actually look at that specifically because what we were trying to figure out was, did the states make an attempt to verify these voters, and how many of them are filtering through that control point that are literally fictitious voters? That was our primary objective to solve. And that's an interesting idea, is to go back and look at the way that the votes came in and take a look at that.
You guys need to think like a criminal more.
You ask and we listen. We're finally bringing the most requested offer ever. Get the queen size premium MyPillow, now only $19.98. MyPillow is made with patented adjustable fill. It adjusts to your exact individual needs regardless of your sleep position. It helps keep your neck aligned and holds its shape all night long so you get the best sleep of your life. But that's not all. Get our 6-piece kitchen or bath towel sets, only $25. Our brand new mattress topper as low as $69.98. Get our famous MyPillow bed sheets for as low as $25 and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get huge discounts on all MyPillow products, including the premium queen-size MyPillow, only $19.98. That's the lowest price ever. Don't delay, order today. From all of us here at MyPillow, thanks America!
I will tell you, and I'm not trying to, trivialize the question you're raising and the side opportunities it may bring. But again, I do want to remind everyone out there that we're doing this on a volunteer basis. This is tens of millions of hours of work. I mean, it's like, I don't even know, tens of millions of dollars worth of research by credentialed experts, hundreds of thousands of hours sacrificed away from our families and in my case, my farm. Which is no longer growing much but weeds. But this is just how, it has to be done. So that's an interesting question. I have to talk to Harry, our chair, because I'm sure he probably did look at that, but we haven't discussed it. It's an interesting
it
point.
would surprise me if not the majority of them weren't mail-in.
It's unknown. There's so many. The issue is, gosh, it's just so bad. When they're editing the vote, you see votes attached to a particular voter's record, and then you see the vote disappear. Sometimes you see another vote attached to that particular voter's record, and you see that disappear. We don't, how this is happening, it has to be investigated. We have to know what in the heck is going on in these systems. Hopefully, it's just administrative failure and incompetence. Wouldn't it be great if that was the problem and this could be resolved for everyone? But you're not allowed to operate a system regarding the third sentence of the United States Constitution out of compliance. You're simply not allowed to do that and call it the same thing as being compliant. How can you certify something as accurate and as having followed the law meticulously when it's not accurate and it didn't follow the law meticulously? That's perjury.
Yeah, well, the thing is, if everybody said, "Oh, let's jump in and get this fixed," we had no idea. But it's not that way. You got to swim through hot tar to get there, to get anything done. And then we've lost our trust in the legal system and getting stuff done. I had a thought. I'm almost 60, so it went away. Oh my gosh!
You got to take more vitamins.
Yeah, I want you to help me with this because you're way deeper into this and more knowledgeable about it. But I've got lots of friends around Missouri. I know Harry's from St. Louis. We got people over there we know because I'm in Kansas City. And
all right.
So there's a lot of back and forth over there. And there's been cases filed, in Missouri saying that the machines hadn't been certified. And I think that's been done in other states too. They just blew it off. They didn't want no part of it. But so with that, I've kind of thought through this, and you tell me if this is a system that would work, because I always look at a process, and then as that process, each step, is there a potential cheat point or fail point?
Right.
Okay, my thought is, what if we had in the big areas had smaller precincts, and each precinct reported their certified numbers to the county. So then you have a record of that being certified in that precinct, and then everything gets clustered together, and then they tally it, send it to the state. Because my concern is from where it gets from county to state, they might change something in the electronic system. But if you had a system, a web like that, and a system that everybody could go on and say, hey, Cole County, they had X amount of votes for Trump, and then the committee there goes, oh no, we didn't. We had much more than that. You could self-regulate, and then I don't know. Would that be a way to go back and relook at that county and say, well, you're right, that's completely wrong in the total number.
Well, I think you're making a couple of really important points with your idea and your vision. One of them is auditability, and the other is scope and scale. Now, fundamentally, the Constitution gives the states the authority and the duty to determine the time, place, and manner. And so if the states come up with a really stupid process, that's kind of on them. But what is unequivocal is the need for them to prove it to the citizens. Again, that's the only job they have. The only reason that there is a Bureau of Elections is to assist these qualified citizens of the United States in the administration of these elections of our representatives. They should have no skin in the game whatsoever except as a servant. And I don't mean that in a demeaning manner. I mean it in a beautiful manner. It's a tremendous service to the country. So one of the areas of the law that United Sovereign Americans believes is deficient is in the transparency of election process. Because if we're not allowed, you see, it's interesting. The right to vote is defined in the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The meaning of the word vote is not just about actually casting your ballot. It has to do, with every part of the process, and it ends in having your vote counted in the appropriate totals of votes in regards to elections for, positions in office and also for ballot referendums, ballot initiatives. So if your vote, if part of your civil right is having your vote counted in the appropriate totals, then the only way you know that you've exercised your right is by seeing the proof. So one of the things I think that you highlight in the solution you're, promoting or presenting is that the smaller the scale and the sooner there is some kind of a tally or some kind of a conclusion drawn, the easier it is to take a look at that and make sure that it does match at all levels. And your concern about the county records and the state records not matching is very well founded. In fact, this is a chronic problem. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't really, there's no particular way to understand it, because the Help America Vote Act says that the state database has to be real-time updated with all of the satellite databases that are being operated, whether they're at the county level or at, whatever township level in some states. They should all be exactly the same. And an electronic system should give you the benefit. For example, if I go to my polling site and I check in and I vote, that should automatically register not only at the polling site, but it should register in the county database and register in the state database.
Okay,
that way no one can go in and use my identity. I mean, that's why you have an electronic system, is to make it really easy to be certain, because every single change in the system has an audit log. There's a timestamp on it. There's a name, a specific individual associated with that. That's why this whole issue, I think it was in Colorado with the passwords, right? They discovered that everybody knew the password, and you see people, great people wearing the shirt that has the password on it, because for weeks, anyone could log into this system and change something inside of the voting system. Well, when you have a system like that, how on earth can you track which authorized individual has signed off on that edit? You can't. So you have just constant noise in the system. These are all elements of the voting system that have to be further secured. And what you're saying is almost exactly what the legislative proposal that United Sovereign Americans is drafting relates to, because it says, hey, instead of administering the entire election and at the end running these risk limiting audits, which all they do is limit the risk for the election officials, let's go and let's study it as the election is being administered right at the site of each control point. And I really like that about your solution, your idea, because I agree. We have to be able to review throughout the entire process. And the smaller the problem we can identify, the sooner we can go in and just like tourniquet that part right there. And the least disruptive that is to the process overall.
Well, it seemed like to me in my scenario, I was thinking, if a precinct would, you go down the layer, precinct would report to the county, county report to the state. If you are making it transparent at the precinct level, officials could go, and it's published on a state site. So you could go to that precinct, you could go to that county and see that all your precincts add up there. But if something's wrong with one of the precincts, you can fix that. And you
Right.
don't have to audit
Or you could
everything
ignore
here.
it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a little cynical.
Well, they do.
I mean, this happens all the time that the precincts don't reconcile. How is that possible?
I don't know how it's possible.
So, but like back to the point I was making, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. But if the state sets up a really inane process that makes it difficult to do this kind of work and difficult to reconcile, well, that just puts the chief election official in a very terrible and tenuous position because they have to either certify that election or they have to throw up their hands and say, this is out of control and we can't certify this election. We may not even be able to figure out who won this election, and we're going to have to re-administer the entire thing because otherwise I'm going to play umpire. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to take a look at this hot mess and I'm going to say, well, it looks like this guy won or it looks like this gal won. And that's not the job of an election official. They are not umpires. They are not allowed to call balls versus strikes. So if the state's process has put that per individual in a tenuous position, that's something that needs to be resolved immediately because, we're not out to get these people. That's not our intention. We filed lawsuits asking the courts, just follow the law.
Right.
Just do this right, please. Like we're not vindictive, but you're trampling our Constitution, our fundamental right here. You're trampling it. And we brought it to your attention. And you know what? We're not going to go away. We're going to keep going to the town boards and the county legislatures. And we're going to keep going to our state reps and our federal. We're going to keep going. We're not going to stop. So when are you going to fix this? Or are we going to actually have to go to that point and say, we're going to sue you personally now under civil rights? Because we do have that option.
I can see it now. If anybody's ever wrote an article about you, it's probably your election denier.
Oh gosh, there's many articles where I'm an election denier.
They got to throw that word in there. Right. Well, you've got.
It's just so trite.
Oh, I know. And you can tell who they are when they make those conspiracy theorists or, they know it's the truth. They got to use that word to cover it up. So your website is unite4, and that's the number 4, freedom.com. Tell us a little bit about how our viewers, the public, how they can interact or support or leverage that to help get this thing done.
Well, we would love help and support. Actually, again, it's all citizens and everyone is allowed to be a part of our team. We just ask you to sign a simple agreement saying, hey, we're all going to do this with dignity and we're going to do it with facts. So if that's the kind of team you want to be a part of, we would like you to be a part of United Sovereign Americans. We love to have people come in who have specific skills, whether it's in graphic design or, booking, all kinds of different skills that people have picked up to make sure United Sovereign Americans is successful and becomes this national movement to take back our elections. We also are grateful for generous donations. If you are interested in what we're talking about here, if you've learned something new, we ask you to go to our website and reciprocate for the information learned and gained. We accept donations. We're a C4, so we don't offer the tax deduction, but you are anonymous when you donate to United Sovereign Americans. And it's just the people through $100 donations, $300 donations, $1,000 donations. That's how we filed 9 federal lawsuits. So your support could be critical to the next phases of our litigation strategy. And we plan to continue filing lawsuits until we have compliance. Either compliance or total accountability are basically our 2 options.
So what
The
is your
option
study?
of walking away from this doesn't work.
Yeah. What is your study sessions? I mean, what is that, just kind of talking about what we've discussed today, or how do they get involved with this?
Actually, it's a lot deeper. These are really, really fabulous. I'm totally biased. I am the the presenter for many of the study sessions, although more and more of our volunteers are stepping up and filling this role as well. What we do in the study sessions on Thursday nights, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern time, is we actually look at federal law. We read the law together. We read elements of the Constitution together. We read federal lawsuits dealing with elections together. And little by little, we just get smarter and smarter and smarter, so that when we see those headlines saying, hey, 60% adjudication rate, we say, oh, time to file a lawsuit, because we're not sitting ducks anymore, just taking their word for it. So the study sessions, personally, they're one of my favorite things about United Sovereign Americans. And all you have to do is sign up to stay informed, and you will get that weekly invite and link. It's public, but that's just the easiest way to get you that link. So you can come in and check it out and see if it's interesting to you, to just get a little bit smarter about how our elections are supposed to run. We have a great time. We go back to, Madison's papers. We read the Federalist Papers together. Stuff you'd think, oh gosh, I really should read that, but I'm just going to, watch my show instead. Come and do it together. We do it together as a team. And again, I'm not an attorney. We're just citizens reading our own history, our own documents, and our own law together, so that we know what constitutes a legally valid election. We can tell the difference.
Stuff we were never taught in school.
And we should have been.
Yep.
The federal prosecution of election offenses, when USA is done, that's going to be required reading for every elementary student.
I hope so. Well, I tell you what, I really appreciate you coming on. I'm sitting there thinking, you're calling me from D.C. You're going to have to head back and take a shower when you get out of that district. You get to wash that evil off.
Well, there are a lot of good people here, and
we're
finding good people to meet, and we're asking for members of the Senate. We met this morning with Senator Rand Paul, and he's the chair of the Homeland Security Committee for the Senate. So we're asking him to support United Sovereign Americans with a letter over to the DOJ saying, hey, from the perspective of Homeland Security, this looks like it could be an invasion of one of our digital borders, because our elections are national security infrastructure, critical infrastructure. So, for example, if you're in Senator Paul's district, you can go ahead and send him an email now and say, hey, I heard you met with United Sovereign Americans. Would you please get on that letter quickly? Because we need this fixed before 2026. And if you're not in his district, well, he's representing you as an American citizen, as the chair of the Homeland Security Committee. You could send him a message, just a polite message, asking him to make sure and follow up with the information he got this morning from USA.
All right. Well, it's been good. I appreciate all the information, and I guess we'll let you go, and you have a great night.
Thank you so much, Randy. It's great to meet you. Great to be on your show. Thanks.
All right. We'll see you. Be sure to comment, like, and share. Sharing is the critical piece to get this information out around the country. Hit that notification button so we can let you know when a new episode comes up. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon. See ya.